The world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everyone, it's your host Kate Byrne with Women Advancing. Happy New Year. Well, I wanted to kick the new year off on a special note, and I think we are. Today's episode brings us a woman who's not just building community, she's architecting frequency, rewriting how women rise and designing what legacy looks like for the next generation of female founders and those who currently are leading. My guest, Jaclyn Orent, is the founder and is the cultural catalyst and frequency architect behind the Cultural Catalyst Network. This is a space where successful women step fully into their wisdom, their power, and their next evolution. Jaclyn's work is rooted in a profound understanding. Simply, when women come together in a turned on and energetically aligned peer relationship, they don't just grow businesses, they transform themselves, they transform each other. And those ripples, well, that, my friends, is what transforms cultures. Jaclyn helps female founders actualize their wisdom into legacy, not just through hustle and self-sacrifice and force, but through ease, grace, and I'm going to say resonance, embodiment, and community that actually nourishes in a very reciprocal manner. Her approach, well, it's part leadership, part energetics, part cultural revolution, and entirely unlike anything you've seen in the traditional business world. To that, I can attest. In our conversation, we're going to explore what it means to be a frequency architect in a world obsessed with productivity, how women can lead from desire instead of depletion, why community is the most underutilized accelerator for female founders, and how personal transformation, in fact, becomes cultural transformation. This one, it's a powerful, paradigm-shifting dialogue for any woman who's ready to step out of old frameworks and into a more alive, aligned, and culturally catalytic way of leading. Frankly, this is for all of us who are, as she gracefully puts it, wisdom workers, who find ourselves looking at, okay, how can I give? How can I serve? What can I do next? Listen in, and you'll know what to do next. Let's dive in. Women Advancing listeners, welcome, welcome. Happy New Year. And boy, do we have a great note upon which to kick off the new year. We're starting with our guest today, Jaclyn Orent, who's a cultural catalyst and the frequency architect behind the Cultural Catalyst Network. And we're going to find out exactly what that means, but just know this 2026, it's not going to be like any other year past. So with that, Jaclyn, welcome. Look forward to hearing your many pearls.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate. I'm so excited and feel blessed and honored to start off 2026 with such an important message.
So we're just going to jump right in because this is in some ways a bit of a different kind of caliber and level of conversation that I've had bits and pieces interwoven throughout because, as I like to say, I'm Betty Business and I'm Jenny Juju, all in one body. So with that in mind, talk a little bit about, what moment first made you realize that, culture, this culture that we're in, it's not fixed and shapeable, influenceable, and even rewritable.
Yes, rewritable. The first moment that I realized that culture was actually changeable was about 2 years ago. My life circumstances called me out to Asheville, North Carolina, where I got the opportunity of working with a multi-business founder. And just to give you a little context for where we were, it was like 65 acres in the back parts of North Carolina, like ultra lush and full of waterfalls and rivers and absolutely gorgeous out there. And one of the things that I realized in my time out there was that, and what I witnessed was literally his entire organization basically rupturing right before my eyes. And his entire team was leaving him. His businesses were not profitable in the way that they wanted them to be. He was carrying extra weight on his body. He wasn't in the relationship that he was wanting to be in. And literally, I got there and his team was like literally walking out. And I took him a little bit farther up the river, and we actually addressed the underlying issue that was causing those circumstances to be that way in that moment. And what I found was that it wasn't that we needed to address some strategy. It wasn't that we needed to address some business structure or some even a business relationship that he was having, or even a personal relationship. What we were actually needing to address was his underlying relationship with himself that was actually creating the rupture within his organization and his personal relationships and ultimately his community. And the big epiphany that occurred for me was that when I changed his consciousness, that when I facilitated the mechanism of surrender, as taught by Dr. David Hawkins, in addition to the use of EFT, emotional freedom technique, a clinically researched tool to help with PTSD, that we changed his perception of what's possible. And so we went from him being in a place of, contraction, fear-based, shame and guilt and all the things associated with what was happening in his life to actually, oh my God, I'm going to be on front of stages. I'm going to do the thing that I'm going to do. And not from a place of force, right? Like I'm not imprinting new belief systems into him, but we actually had to have him let go of what was actually causing his life to be that way. And ultimately on the other side of that, created entire system change just from addressing his consciousness, which I'm not even saying directly his belief systems, because belief systems is where most coaches and people in personal development stop. Your belief systems are a manifestation of the frequency of consciousness that is going through your essence at this moment in time. And so by addressing the level of consciousness itself, we were able to change the perceptions and beliefs that were being created from it, which changed his perception of reality, which changed his behavior and ultimately the results that he got in every single area of his life, which made me realize that to create fractal change, we actually need to address certain people at certain times in what I call critical leverage positions to actually create systemic level change.
And the reason why, for everyone listening, the reason why this is such a powerful conversation to be kicking the new year off is it's just that. I've heard from so many folks that 2025 was a really scratchy year. There was a lot of release, a lot of loss, a lot of stretching that was able to be embodied as a result of making all that space for us. But it's also from a scientific standpoint, there's all sorts of energetic shifts taking place.
Yeah.
We've got sun flares. We've got, oh my gosh, we've had how many volcanoes within the last 6 months blowing up? They're all related. A lot of people seem to think they're not, but it all is. And so the reason why this matters, and I really wanted to introduce this line of thinking for everyone, is just as Jaclyn described, with all of that sort of shifting your consciousness in the way you see and the way you think, the breadth of it, it enables you to think bigger thoughts. It enables you to dream bigger. And frankly, as a result of that, once you see it in your head, everyone's heard it. Universe, all sorts of people, all sorts of resources, all of a sudden magnetically are attracted to you.
Yeah.
So just to provide some kind of context as to why I'm so excited about this conversation and the work that Jaclyn has done. So, Jaclyn, let's talk a little bit more about, the systemic transformation, because to your point, often it requires seeing the whole field, not just the symptom in front of you. So I know one of the things you've done is you've really been working on this systems-led lens, which FYI, everyone, we women are systems thinkers. We just are. There's all sorts of scientific research that demonstrates that. So how did that come to be, your system-led lens?
It was actually a couple years ago. I was listening to, I think, an interview of Charlie Munger of Bridgewater, not Bridgewater, that's Ray Dalio, excuse me. We all know who Charlie Munger is specifically. But, and what I learned about Charlie Munger is that he actually has, or had, I believe he recently died, a bunch of frameworks in his head at all times that he could just call on at a whim, basically, to know what framework to use and when. And I heard that and I was like, oh my God, that's totally me. And I didn't realize it until that moment in time that I'd basically been gathering science backed frameworks that I use in specific circumstances. And what's really cool about how my brain works is that because I'm gathering all these frameworks, my brain can start making connections as to how they work together. And so the cultural catalyst system, which is the science backed system behind the cultural catalyst network, is basically a manifestation of nearly 4 science backed systems to actually integrate the consciousness side of things that the feminine knows to be true, the nonlinear parts of change that we know in our beings to be true, and actually using the science to actually create the cultural change that we want to see in the world.
So, question, lead us through that. Would you walk us through it a bit?
Yeah,
Because it's really, I think it's a really, as a frequency architect, first, unpack that
yeah,
that title, I'll say. I don't want to call it a word,
totally.
right? Because if people would go, well, what the heck does that mean? And it's actually quite science backed. So if you would share a
Yeah,
little bit about define a frequency architect and then how you've designed your science backed system and
yeah.
walk through the five parts.
That sounds like a great idea. I think we'll just backpack off of the Charlie Munger state of things. Like Charlie would have all these different systems that he would integrate and be able to call on at any moment in time. The only thing is, my background actually started with Dr. David Hawkins, the pioneer researcher that created the scale of consciousness and the revolutionary book that was called Power versus Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. And it's funny, I actually was given that book, I believe, because I'm an 8 Enneagram and an ENTJ in Myers-Briggs. So I needed to learn how to use my power for love circumstances and not for my own circumstances, i.e. force, even though it wasn't necessarily conscious at the time. And so that book and that research is primarily what is underneath the rest of the systems that I use. And so when I've been creating change through the leaders that I've been developing, I've noticed that the systems can change, of course. And so why I call myself a frequency architect is because I'm architecting the new systems that we're wanting to create literally through resonance, through the frequency, through the consciousness that's actually underneath the systems themselves. And one of the things that I think the science is missing, and I think why the feminine has necessarily been less interested in science than the masculine per se, not being good or bad, is that the feminine knows that the non-linear is beyond what the mind can understand. And Dr. Hawkins was the first person to actually create a research-backed, like, credible framework that connected, I think, the nonlinear to what the mind can comprehend and understand. And that work was also like the landmark study of how do you actually create exponential change through consciousness itself. So that's where the frequency architect name comes from. I'm addressing the frequency and architecting the systems underneath first and foremost.
Got it. So in essence, the mind can really it can be a great thing, but can also really severely limit us.
Yes. And that's why one of the things that I see in high level leaders is that they actually get blocked by their own intellect. And the way that that actually shows up is that they're trying to figure something out. The mind's function is to try to figure things out. But the only problem is that we cannot solve the problems that we have from the same level of consciousness that created them, which was Einstein. And so for us to be able to see things from a higher level of awareness, we actually have to accept reality as it is without judging it or trying to change it, which is also Dr. Hawkins' mechanism of surrender right there, to be able to have a greater worldview where the solution to something becomes obvious, not because we're trying to fix it or change it, because what we've accepted it, and then it becomes what is true.
Right.
It's just a
Is
knowing.
what it is.
Yes.
And we view it from a place of, I believe it's the Buddhists that say equanimity. Good
Yes.
thing, bad thing, who knows? That's not the
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
It's not ours. Don't get caught up in that because as we've all know with our own actions or things we've done, that's just a surefire way to jump into a really gnarly black hole.
Totally. That's actually the second aspect of surrender as taught by Hawkins is to not judge things as good or bad. And so when you look at judging things good as bad, it's literally a positionality of the mind. In the mind of wholeness, there is no such thing as separation. And so when we're trying to fix or change things, it literally puts our physiology into a place of fight or flight, and it creates narrow tunnel focus that's literally a neurological network in your brain. The only challenge is yes, we need to do that sometimes, but sometimes we actually need to collaborate with each other. Sometimes we need to be creative. Sometimes we need to be open-minded. And that is actually what creates the tipping point that actually creates the momentum to actually create change and make that occur through what is called the fractal and intentional change theory, which is Richard E. Boyatzie's work on change through the system, from the individual to the dyad, which is basically two people, to the team, to the organization, to the community, to the country.
And, that's the other thing too is in hearing that, the other thing is yes, it's positionality, but then it's also paranoia. And that's when we start shutting down, and
Yeah.
that's when it's all fear-based, and that's what brings that frequency down, down,
Yes.
down,
Yeah.
down. Innovation plummets,
Totally.
transformation plummets, uh,
Totally.
everything communication shuts down,
Yep.
and everything goes right back into tiny little ineffective silos.
Yep.
Even some of the sides of the problems that we're
Yeah.
trying to address. Thank you very
Totally.
much.
And that's actually what organizational change psychology actually teaches us in ICT, which again stands for intentional change theory. It's Richard E. Boyatzie's work of literally over 60 years that he's created the fractal change network and the system to actually create change, and how that occurs specifically, that the cultural catalyst system is based off of, and how we've actually designed the cultural catalyst network to create cultural change. What's so interesting about it is when organizational change efforts are actually focused on the negative, they actually don't create sustained desired change, because it literally halts the change process. It puts your body into fight or flight. It makes you focus on the problems. And for us to actually sustain change efforts, we have to consistently get doses of what Richard calls PEA, which stands for positive emotional attractor, which
Mm.
from the Hawkins scale would be above 200 on the scale of consciousness, right?
Yep.
And that neurological place and the physiological place literally drains you. So when we're trying to create long-term change, we can't be focusing on the problems. We might have to in small doses, but we have to have an overarching vision, whether it be individual or collective, that gives us energy to
Right.
sustain the desired change efforts.
In other words, it's literally doing it the way we've been doing. It keeps us exactly where we are, have
Yeah.
been, and perhaps because of the power of how we keep focusing so much, it will even take us deeper, farther, farther back, worse off than
Yes.
before. The Hawkins frequency scale, will you share
Yes.
with others like what that range is? Because when we're making reference to 200 and such,
Totally.
helps, right, to get the context.
Yeah.
Just to also think about, the emotions that are associated, like,
Yeah.
love, joy, bliss, etcetera. That'd be great.
Totally. Yeah. Well, first of all, if you haven't read Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force, that's just a need. I just want to put that out to your audience, that if they haven't read that book, like, that book is a paradigm shifter from someone who was a psychiatrist and a doctor, and he led the most busy and the largest psychiatric hospital in New York City for a period of time. Like, he was a very big deal. And so he
Yeah.
actually was able to combine how the brain works, which is we actually understand through objectivity and logic, and actually combine that with the nonlinear. So the things that we know to be true, but we can't necessarily measure them, or know to be them to be factual. And so what he did was he created the scale of consciousness, which basically is a logarithmic scale that goes from 0 to 1,000. And his biggest breakthrough that he had when actually creating this and researching this work was that 200 on the scale of consciousness was actually the breakthrough from fear, which is life-taking, into love, which is life-giving. And so what he realized was that our emotions, basically, they hold a frequency. And this isn't woo. This is actual science. It can be measured,
Perfect.
the
Yeah.
actual frequency of it, through kinesiology and muscle testing specifically. And the rigor that he had to go through to even get this academically accredited was quite rigorous. So you can call it woo, read the book, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But so basically, there's the scale of consciousness that's from 0 to 1,000. 200 above is love based, which starts with acceptance and has things like courage and joy and gratitude and love. And under 200 is associated with apathy and shame and guilt and fear and anger and desire. So wantingness specifically. And I know that's a little complicated. So long story short, when I'm referring to above 200 on the scale of consciousness, I'm provoking that it's actually from power, that it's life-giving. And I'm saying it's under 200 on the scale of consciousness. I'm saying it's coming from fear. It's coming from the animal brain and the animal body, which is what you're speaking to. As long as we keep focusing on the problems, we're not going to be able to move in the direction of the solution. However, we need to have some compassion for our humanity because our bodies and our physiologies are primed to keep us safe.
Exactly. I think that's really helpful for people to kind of get grounded in and understand so that when we're sitting at our desk, we're getting frustrated. When we're self-flogging because we did something wrong, we know that's not helpful, but
Yeah.
there's a much deeper reason why it's not helpful and why that will have a residual impact on you
Yeah.
for quite a while and those around you.
Mhm.
Because, we've all been there, right? When you walk in a room and you feel or you're around someone and you just feel like, "Ugh, something's off, the energy's right." And we know those people who make us feel terrific and
Yeah.
great when we're around them. So, thank you for doing that. Okay.
I
So,
appreciate that. Yeah.
no, my so, okay, culture if culture, in fact, is the living system,
Yes.
then we know that stories are one of kind of the primary codes that we have within that.
Mhm.
I know you at Culture Catalyst use narrative, both as an intervention tool to upgrade the operating system, but how do
Mhm.
you use it?
Yeah. Well, let's go into the science of why we're even calling it cultural catalyst, because that actually really explains why we're using that linguistic
Sure.
to create the emotional and social contagion that creates change throughout the fractal IE system itself. So, the first part of Richard E. Boyatzie's intentional change theory is actually the aspirational dream. It's the ideal self. It's the collective shared vision that actually starts and continues a change process. And what the research is showing us is that for us to actually create sustained desired change, we actually need to be connecting to a vision for ourselves and the collective that actually fuels us. And ideally, it needs to be an ideal identity, something that creates an aspiration that shows you from where you are to where you want to be, but it's not focusing on the gap, right? That actually creates NEA, which stands for negative emotional attractor, i.e., your body's in fight or flight and you're focusing on problems. So, what that means is we actually need to have a vision for the future, both individually and collectively, that actually gives us energy, that inspires us, that literally activates us to keep going when the challenges get hard, which they inevitably do, because that is part of reality that we get to overcome and help the challenges make us stronger and to persevere even when the things get challenging. So, cultural catalyst is literally that title actually came from one of my long-term clients, is that it is both an ideal identity and an aspirational dream in one sentence.
It's a twofer, a powerful one at that.
It's a twofer, and the funny thing is recently I got to go to a conference for women entrepreneurs, for example, and I was introducing myself as a cultural catalyst, and they look at me and they're like, "Hold on a second. I haven't heard that till now, but so am I."
Oh, great. See?
And the first time that I heard someone resonate in that and mirror back to me that they felt that way, I was giving them a language to describe themselves that they hadn't heard of yet. And once people have the language to describe what it is that they really aspire to, they can identify with it. And then their actions and behaviors can actually change because they're connected to an aspirational vision for themselves, and how they want to contribute to the world that actually creates the intrinsic motivation to help them in their sustained desire change process.
The one thing I really want to emphasize too with folks is, so often people are told, do affirmations, do positive thinking, do write what your mantra is. And yes, fabulous. But what Jaclyn's saying is the key differentiator. It's less on, to her point, the want and the gap. It's what is the feeling when you achieve that? How do you feel? And
Mhm.
you get that,
Yep.
that's where the Shazam and the magic actually happens. Because to your point, that's what raises you up
Mhm.
to that higher
Mhm.
frequency and higher level that draws so much more to you.
Mhm. And one of the things that I want to really note on here too, because so we have the identity that can change our behavior and connect us to our aspirational vision for the future that gives us the fuel to keep going in our change efforts, right? And then the stories that actually come from actually becoming that thing, right? Those stories actually inspire. They provoke people to become who they're meant to be, to do the thing that they need to do, to actualize what it is that's wanting to actualize within themselves. And what the science is showing us is that emotional and social contagion is actually what creates the change through the system. So the stories that we tell, whether you're a cultural catalyst or not, right? Cultural catalyst is the ideal identity for our specific network, right? But the ideal identity in the collective shared dream, the stories of who you are and what your becoming is and what you've achieved can actually inspire others and actually provoke them into a tipping point that creates PEA and potentially can help them actualize themselves, which is why it's so important for women leaders right now to step into their leadership, to become who they're meant to be, to actualize their legacy and bring their wisdom into the world. Because as women, we actually need role models who are telling the stories of what's working and the achievement so that our mirror neurons go off right now and we want to role model them.
Right. And then I would think it gets quantum, right? It becomes exponential. And then that feeds that, because we all know, I know there's been so much science and so much conversation. Everyone is connected. Well, this is exactly why.
Yeah.
We want to get everybody kind of connected and energized in the right direction. I shouldn't say in the right direction, in a more helpful and mutually receptive and nourishing level
Yes.
than literally life sucking. Now,
Mhm.
the one thing I was going to ask is you referenced EFT
Mhm.
prior. That's tapping, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that too, because I remember I was introduced to that a bit ago, but it's sort of slowly seems to be getting a little bit more play. And I want people to think about it because it's such a simple thing that you can do in the car or when you are even at your office sitting at your desk.
Yes.
That helps a lot.
EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It is a clinically researched tool to help individuals actually overcome PTSD and complex PTSD in a multitude of studies. Like this is known information, and it has similar results as EMDR, which is like the primary tool for trauma release in the therapeutic community specifically. Like that's like the gold standards for trauma release in that community. And so when I'm referring to EFT, which again, what that actually means in actuality is tapping on the meridians of the body that actually clear out the energy within the nervous system that is holding the stored stress that is potentially causing a negative resonance within yourself and the people that you're around per se. And so tapping, what it can do is actually help you release and actually let go of the trauma, of the cultural conditioning, of the stress that is held within your nervous system, which is literally the communication system of your body, so that you can yourself become a more resonant leader. And through that resonance actually creates change throughout the system itself. So it's really true that the change starts with you.
Which makes sense if you think about it. You are the
Yeah.
root of the tree that grows around you for sure.
Yes.
So aside from EFT, what are like 2 or 3 recommendations, suggestions you have for someone who wants to kind of amp up their or own, I'll say own, their cultural catalystism?
Yes. Well, the first step is, decide whether or not you even identify with that. If you don't identify with the cultural catalyst, ideal identity, and outcome, then it's not for you. And that's okay. Like, there's not any pressure for anyone to take this on in any way. It's more of a way for people to be able to acknowledge themselves and for them to embody their highest expression. So that's the first thing that I want to communicate. Now, if you do actually identify as a cultural catalyst, the step one that we just addressed is that you yourself need to learn how to change you to be able to change the rest of the fractal. It's a non negotiable, actually, because you're not going to be able to have resonant relationships, which is what causes the change within a social identity group, such as cultural catalysts, to actually create change throughout the fractal. So that's like step one. Like you yourself need to be in resonance for you to be able to be in resonant relationship. Now, step two, let's say you already are in resonance, right? Is that you actually need to be in resonance in your relationships, right? That's your partner, your friends, your family, the people that you work with, your team, the rest of the community, right? The people who are on the other side of the aisle that you might not necessarily agree with. You still need to learn how to be in resonance with those people so that you can actually have open minded conversations, so that you can actually hear each other so that you can actually be compassionate to each other because you're both humans, so that you can actually come into a shared vision where the actual change occurs. So it all starts with you. And at the same time, as you develop higher and higher levels of functioning, which is from Dr. Hawkins, right? Like the goal really is to develop higher and higher levels of functioning, which also means higher and higher levels of productivity. That naturally goes things together there. And what we're really needing right now is leaders, specifically successful women leaders, who are actually ready to take their leadership to an even higher level that they've already achieved so that they can actually create the systems and the change that the women know that we need in this world right now. It's actually, I believe, in a woman's hands to bring everything back into balance.
And, one of the things that I'll toss out there, because, a part of our community, a large part of our community are female founders and funders. So one of the things that, healing this and increasing this frequency level means more funding, frankly, and smoother sources, smoother partnerships, easier serendipitous moments, just
Yeah.
the whole notion of opportunity knocks, you'll get so many more opportunities that you literally become a magnet
Mhm.
for all that you seek. I won't go into the whole thing about the fact that because you already seek it and you see it, it already exists. That'll be
Yeah.
another conversation that you and I have
Yes, that sounds good.
with this, just to get that. It's literally an opportunity, kick this year off, but to also address a lot of the systems that we know that are crumbling. And who
Mhm.
better than us to get in there and start rebuilding?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
For the women who are on this right now, who are at a phase of their life where they are asking what's next. They have already achieved the thing that they've set out to do. They've become the person that they envisioned. They built the thing successfully, and now they're asking what's next with their life. We are actually offering a free masterclass on how to actually scale your cultural impact exponentially. That's based off of Dr. Benjamin Hardy's scaling science. So the reason why we are offering this specifically for those women is because the women who are at their wisdom years, they're actually in positions of what I call critical leverage points. That by developing these women, they have the greatest amount of fractal change on the entire system. And so, what I'm doing here today and what I'm here to do is call forth the women who are ready for what's next, that know that there's something greater that's ready to go within them, and that they know that them stepping fully into their power at this next level is actually what's going to create the cultural change that we're here to see. And the best way that they can actually participate that is to sign up for our masterclass at activateherlegacy.com. It is important to be around the people who are at the next level for you. And there's also a point where you are that person.
Really good point.
And the challenge that I'm seeing with the people who are already at the top of the hierarchy is, number one, it's lonely up there. Number two, they're kind of bored sometimes because they're not being challenged anymore. And number three, they need peers. They need peers that have their similar level of competence because they're not able to have compassion for the people. It's really that simple. And that's what I'm saying is, like, it's easy to find a mentor, to be able to pay someone a mentor. It's easy to find people that you can pay, but it's a whole lot harder to find peers at your level of energy and compassion and shared vision, because those relationships that you have within your peers is actually what creates the resonance for the emotional and social contagion to create change throughout the fractal.
So, can I ask a question? Is this why, when you're talking about how it's really important for those, especially at the top, to have this, because it's critical for them to have compassion?
Mhm.
Is this why there has been such intergenerational friction in the workplace? And where some folks who have finally achieved this role, when they're working with some of the younger generations who are just wired more differently,
Yeah.
and because of that, when they're asking questions, I've witnessed senior folks getting frustrated, almost
Yes.
indignant, feeling that
Yes.
their wisdom is being challenged. And that's not
Yes.
it at all. It's literally
Yes.
because this person is like, how'd you get to that? I'm really curious.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's where so by shared compassion, I'm not saying that these people aren't compassionate, first of all.
Yeah.
The three values of what actually creates resident relationships in ICT are shared vision, shared compassion, and shared energy. And what we mean by shared compassion is actually the ability to have compassion for another person because you have a similar level of competence, which again means capacity in organizational psychology. And so what you're speaking to right now is what I see happening with old dogs and young dogs. So we have the young puppy, and then there's the older dog, and then the older dog literally can have nothing to do with him. They just don't get it. They're annoying. They won't leave me alone.
They're lazy.
Yeah.
Or they're hyper and they're busy and they don't do anything.
And then I see little dogs on Instagram. There's like the big dog that picks up the little dog and puts them in the trash. That's literally exactly what I'm speaking to. So what that means is, okay, that dog needs someone that gets it, right? That's been through what that dog's been through, that can empathize with what that dog's been through, that has similar challenges to what that dog has been through, so that there can be shared compassion. And so the biggest challenge that I see right now is these wisdom keepers right now are literally needing peers. And those peers are what's actually going to give them the motivation and really the fuel to actualize this next iteration of themselves.
Got it. That makes sense, because otherwise they're a flame and it tends to flicker out, and it needs to be relit.
Yes.
And
Which is why the purpose of the Cultural Catalyst Network is literally to bring together 7 to 9 figure female founders so that they actually can have resonant relationship with true peers that turn them on, that fuel their personal evolution and the cultural revolution.
Right. And it goes beyond just success being the definition of,
Yes.
dollar signs and how many zeros are.
However, we need their infrastructure and their resources and their teams and their influence and their authority to actually scale their impact, which is where Dr. Benjamin Hardy's work of the science of scaling actually comes in. So we know how to create change throughout the fractal, that's ICT, but how do you exponentially create change? And that's the work that Dr. Benjamin Hardy is offering. And that's what our masterclass actually covers, is using the science of scaling for these women who've already achieved all that they've set out to achieve. And now we ask what's next? And then how do we actually scale that impact and that vision exponentially and ground it into their vision today? Not something that's out there, but actually affects them right now and activates them right now to actually go forward and take action and commit on it.
I was going to say present forward, as opposed to, and keeps them away from getting stuck back in the past.
Yes. And that's where the boredom is stemming from right now.
Is it from that? Because everything's focused on the past. Well, and I would also say, to me, I think a lot of it is a lack of creativity, because everyone's just kind of iterating on what was or what has been.
Yes.
And
to some extent, yes.
Yeah.
It depends on who you are and what you've achieved, though, right? Because the creative fuel, like you have to be a turned on woman to have creativity. You know what I'm saying? That's where the life force comes from specifically. So that's why we want to bring these peers together so that they can turn each other on and the creativity can start flowing. And then they start resource sharing and they start collaborating and they start having fun and creating the next iteration of what they know their life can be.
And then it all just takes off, which is going to be huge. And I do completely agree with you regarding the feminine kind of knows what needs to be done and is doing it and going to do it. I think the one thing that I've always loved is that notion of the feminine mystique. So, and by that, what I mean is we just get it done. We don't have to be loud and braggy about it. We can be, we will be at times, but sometimes having a better understanding systemically and kind of getting the vibe of the situation at hand, sometimes just going and doing it undercover, or not undercover, but just quietly getting it done and doing it creates the greatest influence and the largest impact and kind of Shazam moments, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It can. And what I've been learning from Mama Gina specifically is that, as women, we actually need to learn to brag.
True.
That we've been hiding ourselves for long enough, that we've been, conditioned for thousands of years to feel lesser than. And so part of us is stepping into our power and our creativity is honoring our wins, honoring our celebrations, honoring our brags, and doing it in sisterhood. Because that, again, creates that positive emotional contagion that allows for the change process to continue to occur. So no, I actually don't think that we need to be doing things from behind the scenes anymore. I actually am calling forth the wisdom keepers right now to come step into your next level. And it doesn't have to be hard. It could actually be fun and with peers. And that it could be way easier than it was in the first creation of the thing that you created. And it doesn't need to be hidden. We actually need the woman to be out there and speaking right now, because for you, one of the questions you asked me was, but how about the younger generation? Well, if the women leaders are hiding, how is the younger generation going to have a role model for their neurons going to go off so that they can actually be inspired to become more like them? We can't. So I actually want to call these people forward. I want to call them out of hiding. I want them to step forward into their greatness and own it, because we need that for the younger generations right now. We need woman leader role models, and there's not very many of them. So how are we supposed to have role models if they're hiding and pretending like their wins don't matter? You identify as a cultural catalyst, and you are a wisdom keeper that is ready to answer the call and actually create the culture that you want to see here right now. I call you forth. I'll call you forth to step into your greatness, to be the role model that the women need right now, and to leave the legacy that you know you're here to leave for all of humanity right now. Really, what I'm requesting of you is that if you are ready, if you are willing, and if there's a spark of interest in you that's ready to answer the call, please join us on our free masterclass where we'll actually teach you how to scale your cultural impact based off the science of Dr. Benjamin Hardy's science of scaling. And we'd be so excited to have you there, because you being in resonant relationships with a woman who have achieved the level of success that you have literally achieved is the difference between us creating the change that we want to see or not. So please show up. We need you now more than ever.
So with that, Jaclyn, thank you so, so much. A happy new year to you and yours. And I can't wait to see all the catalytic conversions that this network is able to do and empower. Thank you so much for your generosity of spirit and knowledge. Seriously, it'll be a great 2026 for all.
Yes, very much so. Let this emotional, positive contagion nourish you and your listeners and activate them into their highest potential.
Thanks so much. Until next time. Whew. Did I tell you or did I tell you? 2026, gonna be a big year. And I think putting into place many of what Jaclyn Orent recommends for us to raise our frequency and really start stepping up and being the cultural catalyst that we can be. So important. This is going to make sure that you're going to be able to do it. So takeaway number 1, focus not on the gaps and what isn't in any kind of situation that you're facing. Focus on what is and what could be. And more importantly, what it's going to feel like when you do achieve that goal. I've done that for years in my own sales career, or if there's a talk I have to give, it's the focus of how I want to feel. Frankly, on all my podcasts, I do the same thing. How do I want to feel at the end of the day, and what do I want to deliver? So I recommend you do that and see how things change and see what ends up being magnetized to you. Surrounding yourself by people, it sort of goes to follow that you would surround yourself by positive people, but it's also those who really can both fill you up, but also have a deep compassion for you and all that you're trying to achieve. And in so doing, you'll be a match in energy, a match in compassion, and then a match in capacity and vision. That's when we'll really start seeing some of this change. Join me on this class. I think that's what's going to be really fascinating, because I think it's kind of now or never pivotal moment for all of us. So I'm just going to read that website. It's activateherlegacy.com. I'm going to sign up for the masterclass, and I hope to see you there as well. So with that, happy New Year. And oh my gosh, we've got some really amazing conversations coming up in the year to come. So I look forward to you joining me. Please don't be a stranger. Let me know other things you'd like to hear about and other folks from whom you'd love to hear. Until the next time.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. Be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.